Chapter 1. The First Thought That Wouldn't Leave. On the nature of the bubble and why some never let it go. The valley was already full when Sproutlyn arrived. Not crowded, never crowded, but alive with quiet convergence. The ground curved inward like a listening bowl, and within it the sprouts gathered not to speak, but to remember something they had almost forgotten. Beside each sprout hovered a bubble. They were not toys. They were not illusions. They were containers. Each bubble held what could not survive unprotected in the outer world, treasured thoughts, half-formed desires, dream fragments from the in-between realm, the place one enters while lucid dreaming, where reality loosens its grip and possibility feels breathable. Sproutlyn felt the familiar ache in her chest as she observed them. She had always known this place, not the valley itself, but the state, that hovering, permeable feeling where one could step sideways out of the waking world and into a life that felt truer, even if it had not yet learned how to exist materially. Some bubbles shimmered like living crystal orbs, dense with stored visions. Others were thin, flickering, as if their contents had been questioned too often. A few had collapsed entirely, their former keepers standing beside them with an air of practiced dismissal. Sproutlyn recognized that posture. It was the posture taught in the human world. Grow up, be realistic. That was just make-believe. She had heard it enough times to know its rhythm, but never its truth. Her own bubble hovered quietly at her side. It was not large, not impressive, but it was alive, responsive to her attention, sensitive to her breath, filled with an unmistakable sense of interior depth. Within it lived worlds she visited in sleep and carried traces of during the day. Forests that felt older than memory. Mandrake scrolls that unfolded themselves only when she stopped trying to read them. She had never abandoned these places. She had never learned how. As the sprouts sat together in the valley, something subtle occurred. The bubbles did not merge, but they acknowledged one another. A gentle resonance passed between them, as if recognizing shared origin without requiring sameness. This was not fantasy. This was infrastructure. Sproutlyn felt it then, a realization both tender and unsettling. These bubbles were not indulgences. They were rehearsal spaces for worlds not yet stabilized. Life, she understood, was shaped not only by what one did while awake, but by what one allowed to continue existing in the in-between. Meaning was not accidental. It was cultivated by returning to the same inner terrain until it became familiar enough to trust. Some sprouts, she noticed, treated their bubble like a novelty, peering in occasionally, then laughing softly at themselves, embarrassed by what they still carried. Others clutched theirs tightly, trying to extract answers, futures, assurances. Neither approach lasted. When the gathering loosened and the sprouts began to leave, bubbles dissolved, dimmed, or settled back into the valley soil. Sproutlyn watched her own carefully as she rose. It remained behind. Relief touched her ribs. Good, she thought. It belongs here. She walked home believing she had left it in safekeeping, believing the valley was its rightful container. She was wrong. When she crossed her threshold and felt that familiar attentive density beside her shoulder, understanding unfolded with a quiet inevitability. The bubble had not followed her. It had never left her. The valley had only revealed what was already true. That she had reached the stage where the bubble no longer needed a shared holding ground. It was now part of her initiation, a mobile chamber of becoming. This was the next level of learning. Her guides, those subtle presences she had always sensed more clearly in dreams than in daylight, stirred in recognition, not as voices, but as alignment, as if they were saying, now you will learn to live inside what you once only visited. The bubble was not an escape from life. It was a continuation of it, a way to carry forward the world she intended to one day inhabit fully, perhaps even beyond this life. Sproutlyn felt without fear that these spheres were not limited to one incarnation. They were archives of meaning, blueprints of afterlives built deliberately, lovingly, through sustained imagination. Some would discard theirs and call it maturity. She would not. She had never adapted to the human insistence that imagination must end where responsibility begins. For her, responsibility was to tend the inner garden faithfully, to protect the fragile worlds forming there until they were strong enough to breathe on their own. Sproutlyn sat, letting the bubble hover beside her. She did not peer inside. She did not ask it to perform. She simply allowed it to exist, full of dreams not yet born, desires not yet translated, and worlds waiting patiently for her to learn how to live them into being. The bubble as world seed. The dream bubble is a container for sustained inner worlds. It holds treasured thoughts too delicate for immediate manifestation. In between realms, accessed through lucid dreaming, proto-worlds intended for future living, not fantasy. Those who discard the bubble lose continuity. Those who carry it responsibly begin world-building. Meaning is not found, it is kept alive. Sproutlyn's journal, personal notation. Open quote. They told me it was childish. I tried to believe them once, but the garden never stopped calling and the scrolls never closed. When I let myself return, everything made more sense. This life included. If there is an afterlife, I don't think it appears suddenly. I think we build it slowly by refusing to abandon what matters before it's useful. Close quote. A bubble is not a dream you escape into. It is a world you practice living in.